This episode, I will be commenting on a recent newsletter sent out by the Lucchese Trust. The Lucchese Trust, formerly the Lucifer Publishing Company, is a non-profit organization which is located within the United Nations. It is important to understand, if you are Christian, that this name does not imply what you may immediately presume it to. Note also that Satan is never called Lucifer in the scriptures to begin with. The letter to Lucifer sent by God through the prophet was addressed squarely to a very earthly king. The reason we called him by that name is that this is a person with wisdom that was rather clearly either going unused, or abused deliberately. Because of this, that person fell very far from the mark of being called by that. This is an essential teaching, not from a church, but directly from the scriptures themselves, that, as shown even by the much revered Solomon, even the most wise will fall to their corruptions. Now, having gotten that part out of the way, I do hope that some of you who are indeed Christians will continue to listen, rather than believe what your prior thoughts may have misguided you to fear. I'm reading from the cover page of the second issue of the Lucchese Trust World Goodwill Newsletter, 2020, quote, "The focus is on the issues of international unity, capital, labor and employment, and minorities. All of these have been intensified by extraordinary global conditions created by the pandemic. Nations have struggled to coordinate their response with one another. Even without supranational groupings such as the European Union, the world of work has seen a major shift towards home in some fields, while other industries have been almost completely shut down, and the issue of migration, already so inflamed, has become even more controversial in a world of closed borders. So this is, in one sense, the perfect time to focus on creative solutions to these issues that have been proposed in the past, and those newer solutions which are now emerging in response to this global crisis." End quote. This set of problems should sound familiar to most, as more people today are aware of what is going on around them than in prior times. That could be a positive thing, helping to identify and fix the troubles of our world. Or, that could be a very negative thing, only serving to polarize people until they believe one extreme or another of a single ruling group will somehow solve any of the problems we face today. I disagree on the first statement made of the nations in the newsletter. From what anyone can see, the nations have in fact only been competing for the best image projected to their own respective people. They race to see who can cover the most sins in the least time. They are all competing on propaganda. Going on with the newsletter, quote, "These three problem areas are especially concerned with the close interaction between politics and economics. Humanity continues to struggle with the fact that the misuse of political power can feed off of the expression of greed in a mutually reinforcing loop. We might say that politics has been captured by economics, with the material wealth of a nation being seen as indicative of its prosperity. But, is this really the case? There have been a number of alternative proposals for ways to measure the well-being or happiness of a nation, including the United Nations Development Programme's Human Development Index, and the Good Country Index at goodcountry.org. What distinguishes these measures from objective measures such as the gross domestic product is that they usually include one or more subjective dimensions, seeking to highlight various qualities of consciousness. Simply by directing our attention to the key importance of such broad and immeasurable principles as happiness or the common good, they help to lift the mind out of an obsession with reduction of everything to numbers. Like all socio-economic measures, they will only ever be able to be approximate measures, but they help us to start thinking in a better direction, and to question the priorities of the status quo. End quote. I have to agree with that last part. We seriously must question and perhaps destroy the status quo if we've got any chance to survive. However, as for the rest of that block, it seems to lack a basis of any firm foundation. It is a lovely ideal, and really that is the point in the first place, to share ideals. Unfortunately, moving large groups of people from a thought of an ideal into a changing of their world is nearly impossible. If anything, the concept has been used in the past to deceive, as in the recent communist states. At the same time, the so-called American dream is used to manipulate immigrants for the sake of inexpensive labor, a certain callback to slavery. Anyway, it seems to be hope without hope's cause. There must be a pathway created, or else the mass will never move. It is the cowardly state of an endless race to be second. The first to change is always taking a possibly absolute risk in order to blaze the trail. Even now, in a few rather draconian societies, there are already surveys as to the happiness of the people. Somehow, they always seem to give the same, and rather shiny, results. Clearly, this too is abused. In practice, along with our ideals, we must consider the worst of realities, and also the worst mentalities that may arise from perhaps overly focusing on eventual arrivals into better worlds, at the cost of working to do so. Nonetheless, it is this ideal and its source which I wish to impress upon you in reading this to you, though you, if you are a Christian, would perhaps not expect. Here is a tenet of the Luciferian organization made so frightful by way of paranoia and lack of knowledge. I quote, "Perhaps the highest ideal of mankind is one of world unity, which all people, regardless of nationality, race, religion, and ideology, are unified not by their sameness, but by their commitment to a culture of goodwill which has no boundaries, and which permeates the diversity of humankind." The seed of this idealism can be traced back 2,000 years to the beginning of the Piscean Age, when Christ demonstrated the spiritual potential of the human being to bridge the heavens and the earth, and to express love and goodwill towards all. The keynote of the Christian gospel message, God is love, today extends beyond the confines of religious doctrine and seeks to transform all aspects of human society and living. End quote. I will leave that part almost entirely alone. I cannot, and if you're honest then you cannot, disagree with the power of the message which the Christians are supposed to be spreading. It has certainly gone well beyond the churches. However, in doing so it would appear that the churches have themselves gone horrifically astray. As if their scriptures have become confused, they seem to have become quite the opposers of Christ, and the term in the Bible for that is twofold. An opposer of the Son is called an Antichrist. An opposer of the Father or of mankind is called Satan. Consider these things closer. Consider what you are, and have been. Consider, then, what you are meant to be. Become more like a Lucifer, and less like a Satan, or, in the manner which Jesus, the Nazarite and beloved King of Israel, we could say, be ye wise as serpents, and harmless as doves. Consider, and come to know the truth. Don't be afraid of the light, and ask your scriptures as to what you wish to know, if you will, or else, at least, remember what Jesus said while he was living among us. He was, inarguably, right. Be courageous. Fight with your words, and use them as you are led to, not by what you are taught, but what you know to be true. Do not lie. Do not kill. These are simple. They all are. Goodbye for now.